Hi, my name is Glory. I'm a second-year student studying at the Bartlett School of Architecture in London, originally from Hong Kong.
And I'm Shan, a second-year architecture student, and I'm into musicals, oil painting, movies, and embarrassingly into self-help and Richie biscuits.
You're listening to Designing Thoughts with the Archigals, a podcast where we talk about working and creativity, living well, the human condition with relationships, and life experiences. Before we get into the podcast, I would just like to ask for a small favor. It would mean a lot to us if you could leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or leave a comment on our YouTube channel just to let us know how you feel about the podcast and other topics you'd be interested in hearing in. Hi everyone, welcome back to our podcast. I'm your host Glory and this is my co-host Shan. So today our podcast is going to be a book review of the book The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand, which is a novel published in 1934. So it's a novel essentially about individualism versus collectivism, and we thought it was an interesting book to analyze because of the fact of the heavy theme in architecture, which happens to be the course that we're both studying in university. So we thought it would just be nice to discuss about this book and our thoughts about it, including individualism and also connecting it with our experience in architecture. So yeah, so first of all, we're just going to do a quick summary of the book for those who don't know it, but you don't need to have read the book to be able to enjoy this episode because I think the themes are quite general, so we'll just go through the book.
But this is a spoiler, I guess, the summary part.
Yeah.
Actually,
yeah.
the whole review will probably be a spoiler. So if
Yeah.
you're thinking of reading it.
But we're just saying you don't need to know the book in advance because the themes can be generally discussed. So yeah, we'll just do a quick summary of the book with spoilers ahead.
Okay, do you want to start the first part?
Yeah, sure. So the book kind of follows this person called Howard Rourke, which is a young architecture student that got expelled from his architecture school due to the fact that he refuses to follow the school's traditional rules in designing. So in contrast to his classmate Peter Keating, he receives praise from the school for following their expectation, but secretly asks Rourke for help. Rourke goes to a disgraced architect for work whom he admires, whereas Keating goes to a prestigious architecture firm to work. So Keating receives success almost instantly, while Rourke almost never gets recognition. A socialist architecture critic, Ellsworth Toohey, uses his influence to promote his political agenda and tries to distort Rourke's career. So Rourke also comes across Dominique Rape, who becomes his lover and happens to be the daughter of the prestigious architect that Keating works for. And she thinks that nonconformity has no chance of winning, so she goes between helping Rourke and working to undermine him.
Yeah, so then after that, Keating marries Dominique instead of the woman that he loves, and then he realizes that like his best buildings were all designed in part by Rourke, so he kind of becomes like a has-been as well, and he doesn't really have many jobs in the end. And Rourke gets more and more ridiculed by the architectural community, while this architecture critic called Toohey, um, especially is the one who like targets him and really brings down his career. But then he makes a few powerful friends, like for example Gil Winan, who is actually Dominique's new husband after she breaks up with Keating. So like the story is very circuitous, but anyway. And then so like Gil Winan really really likes him and looks up to him and his work. But then after that, he suffers by losing his media empire over his support for
Rourke.
Yes. And then Rourke built one last building for Winan in the end, and he also marries Dominique.
Yeah. So there's actually a scene I think we missed, but basically Rourke was accused of something. I forgot, but he was ended up being in a court scene, and he had to essentially like give a speech about like individuality and how he doesn't want to conform to what society tells him to do. And that was like a very powerful scene. And in the end, I think he won the crowd over, and which is why he built the last building for Winan and ends up marrying Dominique. So that was, I guess, the entire summary of the story. So as you could tell, it's a lot of individualism versus collectivism inside, which is almost as if Rourke is fighting against the entire society or the collective group of people who represent architecture, or say the public who doesn't agree with his work and his views or like say his talents. So it's a lot of him fighting against the grain
Yeah.
and like what society and the public expects of him. Yeah.
Yeah, so there are very few characters who are not part of like this faceless mass of people who are the same. So the people who stand out would be like him, Dominique,
Rourke.
and probably Tuhi. I feel like the
Yeah.
rest are pretty much even Keating is like part of the same mindset as as the other characters in the story. So it's like it's a bit
Ke- Keating is
of
like the extreme version
yeah.
of what a person who conforms to society would look like in the lens of the author.
Yeah. So, apparently, Ayn Rand wrote the novel to project her ideal man, what she thinks an ideal man is. So that involves like a very strong moral ideal where the guy really, really sticks to his ethics and what he believes, and that is considered good in her eyes to like never waver in what you believe and what you think. And then to also, yeah, be like very much the same in terms of morality and also in terms of ability. It's like always quite innate whether you have the talent or not. And if you do have the talent, then not letting other people persuade you otherwise. Yeah, and also very emotionless. So at one point in the story, Rock actually gets angry because he lets his job mean so much to him, and also Dominique also gets angry because she likes Rock so much. And I guess it's quite interesting because like Ayn Rand's ideal of a guy is quite emotionless about needing other people, but very much passionate about their work, like super passionate.
Yeah, but in a sense, I felt like in the book, like Rourke received help from other people. So technically, it doesn't make sense for the author, or I guess, I don't know if we're assuming this, that they don't need help and truly believes that they're gonna make it themselves. And yeah, I think you describe Ayn Rand's like ideal man quite well, and obviously her belief that individualism is superior to collectivism. So I guess in a sense she thinks like almost everyone should be like Rourke and like fight for his own ideals and stuff. But I guess in a way, like sometimes I think about it, I'm like, is it really okay for every person to be like Rourke? Then will society still function in the same way, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also because Rock is such an extreme, I'm not sure whether she wants everyone to be like Rock. Maybe she just thinks that that's the ideal that we should all
Chase
work
after.
towards. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't think that he's like a very he's definitely not the kind of person that I want to become. But then I guess the point of the story is to compare Keating and Rock, where they're on both different sides of the spectrum, and maybe come
Yeah.
to the conclusion that we should be somewhere in the middle. That's like my conclusion, because my conclusion is like I don't want to be either of them.
Yeah, they're both very extreme. Like Rourke is like, I'm right. Like you have to listen to me, and nothing you say is gonna change my mind. And Keating is like the extreme opposite of that, where as soon as somebody says something, he'll be like, okay, okay, let me like follow what this person has to say because of the prestige that's gonna follow after that.
And Rock, like
Yeah.
for example, when he speaks to people, he never butters them up. He doesn't even try to make conversation. He just listens to them
Yeah.
speak and then says like okay, and then like walks away. He doesn't try at all.
Yeah, he does. He really doesn't try at
Yeah.
all.
He believes that like if his work is good, then people will come to him. And I feel like I used to believe this a bit, that like if your work is good, people will notice, but I don't know, I just feel like it's definitely not true.
Yeah, because the thing is, I mean, in a way, Rand is saying, like, you shouldn't let society affect what you believe in and your stance. But it's like, what if you're wrong? You know, like, what if your work is not actually that good? And it's also the thing, like, with architecture and, like, I guess everything art related, because in the book they use architecture as the main field that Rourke and Keating is in. But I think just in general, with anything that's kind of art related
Quite
and like
creative.
subjective, yeah, how are you supposed to know that you're really that good? Because it takes a lot of confidence, right? So I guess that's what she's saying. Like Rourke has so much confidence that his work is good, but then who are we to say that I know my work is good, therefore it must be good?
Yeah.
Because
But
I
she
feel
also
like
has lots of disdain for like critics though, because like if you like to answer your question, if who's to say that your work is good? I guess like critics and like the public. So okay, maybe not the public, like experts in the field or other critics. And Tuhi in the book is like a architecture critic, so technically he does know what is good and what is bad.
yes, but in a way, I guess in the book they were trying to use to because kind of the villain in the book, right? So he was using his power and authority over, like, in the magazine or like the press to like form the public opinion on Rourke's work, and like really turn the, because I guess the critic forms what the public opinion is, because the public will be swayed by the critic. So I feel like it's still very subjective. If only a small circle of people has an opinion on your work, and that influences the majority of people on your work, especially with something that's very art related and creative, then I don't know what I'm trying to get at, but I guess what I'm trying to say is very hard to like really tell what is good or not, because
So you're saying that it's
the
hard to
opinion,
know, but
yeah,
maybe what she's trying to get at is that because it's so hard to tell, and also because you can't really trust critics, really the only way to tell is to know it
believe in
yourself.
yourself.
Yeah.
Okay. But you still have, I feel like you still have to like evolve. Okay, well, I
Yeah,
guess
I
in
feel like that's the
book,
problem I have with the character as well. That like he doesn't really evolve. Actually, doesn't evolve at all. Like even when he graduates from school to when he builds his last building in the book, he still
the same.
builds the same kind of buildings, and yeah, he's also act kind of the same.
I guess, I mean, there's definitely like progression, as in he worked, what I
He
was trying
works
to get at,
hard. That's
yeah, he
true.
worked hard, and I guess the point I was trying to say, that he did get help in a way, like, because he went to work for this disgraced architect, right? So he must have learned something there.
Yeah.
And then he also met Dominique, but I guess in a sense, like, I get what you're saying, like the base part of his personality never changed, so he kind of remained the same throughout the story, except when the situation arises and he needs to speak up for what he believes in. That's like the only time it changes a little bit. Otherwise, he's like very like he's very like calm, and he's just there
Yeah,
as a
that's
person.
true.
Yeah. And the thing is, I don't know, like, you know how he chases the fact that he is so individualistic and he does his own thing, but he doesn't really chase after like the thing. As in, I feel like some of the things that happened, like the reason he kind of got where he was at towards the end, is all based off of pure chance. But I guess it also makes sense to say that I think in the book he mentioned that fame was never the reason. Like, he just liked what he was doing, which I appreciate, I
Yeah.
suppose. Yeah.
Which is also doesn't really make sense to me in the sense that like maybe if he had gone out to promote himself and promote his vision, he would have gotten more things built in his vision as well.
Yeah, right. Actually, that makes a lot of sense. Like, if he really cared, then I feel like he would have done something to like actively try and like expand the circle and opportunity of his work.
Yeah. But
But
maybe
then at
what
the same
Ayn Rand is trying to get at also is that would require compromise, and he knows that compromise is like not for him. To know.
Yeah, I guess so. But it's almost as if he's like is egotistic the right word? Like, it's so much confidence in himself that he
Yeah.
thinks he doesn't need it. Like, he just knows it. He's like, I don't need to show other people, but I know that I'm good, type of thing.
Yeah. That's another problem that I have with this character is that his talent is so innate, and she makes it so clear that no one else is talented. Like basically everyone else is bad and his work is good.
Yeah,
Except
I
for
felt
like Henry Cameron.
because he looks up to him.
Yeah.
But he
So
was also disgraced.
yeah, so maybe that's interesting. Like that's a perspective that she's writing the book from, like his perspective. So literally in his eyes, like he's literally the only good one and everyone else is bad.
Which I guess is a little bit problematic, like if you apply that to like a scenario in real life. Because
Yeah.
I don't think you could survive without like social connections and
Yeah.
like compromising with other people.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Like, I feel like the only reason Rourke succeeded in quotation marks is because of his luck, the scenario, the people he met along the way, which liked him. Like, he didn't actually
That's true.
try to be friends with them. So it was all out of pure luck
Yeah.
in the end.
For him,
Yeah.
everything is so black and white. People either like him or dislike him, or are
Yeah.
sexually attracted to him or not. It's so
I feel like the book
obvious.
is very black and white anyways, because I feel like Ayn Rand, like, she was just trying to make a point as an author, So maybe she needed like very extreme like scenarios to like get her point across. But I
Yeah.
mean, it's just we all know that in real life it's not that extreme and not as black and white.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So how do
And
you
yeah,
think this has affected you in terms of how you will treat other people, I guess, or like think of yourself? Do you think you want to be more like Rock?
I don't. I think. Okay, I need to make a point that I actually quite enjoyed reading the book. Like, I felt
Mm.
like the plot was quite interesting, and the characters. I think they were just interesting to read and like how they think. But I think we have the same views with like the limitations of the characters and the problems we had specifically like with Rourke and like the other characters. But overall, I quite enjoyed the book. But yeah, in terms of like the way I'm gonna treat people and like also myself, I think the book what how do I say it, like I think the most important thing for me like after I read it, I think is having like more confidence in like my abilities,
Mm.
especially in like the creative field, because I felt like sometimes you really need to like push your own agenda and like push your own work, because if you're not going to be the person to do it, like no one's going to push you as hard as you can. That was kind of like the main takeaway for me, and also like believing in like the style you have and also the work that just the work you produce in general, because I think it's so easy for us because we have so many critics around us, like especially also in architecture school and our tutors, like it's very easy to like point the bad stuff out. And I
Mm.
feel like for me, like I just really need to like kind of believe in myself and also tell myself that like there's good qualities in the work that I produce, like not everything is bad, and also not just like following blindly like
People say,
what people say
especially
is like good
tutors.
work. Yeah, like kind of question the system and just, but it's all like a balance, you know. You can't do too much of like each thing, otherwise you
Yeah.
kind of become Keating or Rourke.
Okay,
What
we should
about
probably
you?
explain a bit about Keating. So, Keating as a character is very submissive. He is like the captain of the how like student council and many sports teams,
Basically,
and
he was top of his class. He got all the
yeah,
prizes.
he dates
Yeah.
he dates like the okay, to be fair, he didn't date the prettiest girl at the start, but so basically the it's interesting because and then he gets like the best job in the field, and then he's like so much so influenced by his mom, and he also the only thing that's genuine about him is probably his love for Katie.
Which is like a very normal, average, mediocre girl based on the book.
Yeah, but he doesn't let himself like marry her because obviously he'd rather marry someone else who is more successful and connected socially, and that turns out to be
Yeah.
Dominique.
Yeah, which liked Rourke.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
So I think like Keating as a character is like pretty spineless, but he's also very much relatable, like to me at least. Like I really related to him because it just is easy when you're doing well and coasting in life to just continue on that path and expect that things will turn out well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the only thing with Keating is I think a lot of people are like that, like chase what the general public perceive as good. It's kind of like going to a good university, high rankings, take a prestigious job, work at like a well-known company. Like who doesn't want that? Like
Mm,
being honest, obviously. But I do think like it's. I think for me, it's very much kind of what you said, like in the middle, like taking a balance of both. Like yes, it would be nice to work in a well-known company and go to a good school, but only if you really like that, like you truly believe in yourself that that's what you want and not what your parents or what the people around you want from you, that I think it makes sense. um yeah, and sometimes almost with like unconventional careers, I think doing those, I think it's kind of like in the middle where you need to because you need to sustain yourself with like financial support, like you need
mm.
to be stable, right? But which is I guess what people also expect of you. So it's kind of like doing what you really like but also being able to like provide for yourself, which is kind of what people around you expect of you anyway. So I feel like that's kind of like a balance
Yeah, this
already.
reminds me of like that conversation we had about suffering as an artist because like that I think what you said is right, like you're expected to provide for yourself and your family, but Ayn Rand's ideal man is only expected to be like
Provide
a
for
tortured
himself.
artist who wants to
Yeah.
create his own vision.
Yeah, I think that's really true because Actually, did he have a family in the
No.
book? I
He
can't,
has
I
to
can't
have a
remember.
family.
Like, he had nobody to provide with, so he can do whatever the hell he wanted. So,
Mm.
I guess in a way, like, it made sense for him to behave that way if he doesn't have that many responsibilities, anyways. Like, he can just not eat for a week and, like, live off, I don't know, someone else's apartment. Like, he doesn't care. For him, like, his work is the most important thing,
Mm.
which is a little bit toxic, I guess, for like people our age or like I guess just in the modern world. But I think it worked for the book,
Mm.
so it was okay. Yeah, and I think another thing I wanted to talk about with Keating is that like it made sense for him to follow that path because I think a lot of people our age and even now in this day are following kind of like I guess a relatively similar path. But I think for Keating, the reason why it's so extreme for him is because it reaches a point where he actively like betrays himself and he doesn't actually care what he wants anymore, and it's all about like how other people view him. Because in the beginning when he graduates top of his class, he goes to a prestigious firm to work. Like I feel like it's all fine until he kind of betrays himself, like by abandoning his ex-girlfriend like Katie, who
Mm-hmm.
was like an average girl, and he actually liked her,
Mm.
but he thought oh it wasn't good for his social standing because he's like a prestigious architect now, so he can't be seen with her anymore. So
Mm-hmm.
he actively like dumps her and moves on to Dominique. So I feel like that's where he like actively betrays himself, and he chases all of these big projects and like betrays himself when he knows he might not have the ability to execute them to like a good standards, which is why he asked Rourke for help. So I feel like this is the point where it gets like too out of hand, and I don't think people in real life would go that far. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you
I
think?
think that's pretty interesting because also didn't realize that that was probably the only time when he actively destroys what he wants. Well, to be fair, I feel like there are a few turning points. The first also is when he wanted to be an artist, but his mom wanted him to be an architect, so he did that. And then after that, when he wanted to marry Katie, but then his mom didn't want him to, so he didn't do
Oh,
that. I feel like there's a lot of his mom being involved. Like his mom
this is
wanted him
such
to
a
marry
this
Dominique,
is a
so he did
very
that.
Asian parents thing, but he's not Asian.
Yeah, I was thinking that even the way that she speaks to him is so Asian in the sense that it guilt trips you by portraying yourself as like, oh, you don't care about me, like I'm not important, don't worry about me, just focus on yourself. But if you cared about me, you would do this and this and this.
Oh yeah, that's so guilt trippy.
Yeah, she really guilt trips. At one point, she's like, oh yeah, I don't think anything, like it's all up to you. But if you really wanted to know, then this, I think Katie's the wrong
Oh,
fit, something like that. So
yeah,
I
that's
think I
so
really
sad.
recognize like the Asian parent mindset in those stories.
Yeah. That's so sad. I feel so bad for Keating. The
Yeah,
thing
but
is, I feel like
mm,
he kind of sees it, but he actively tries to ignore it and betray himself.
yeah, also because every time he talks to Rock, Ayn Rand always makes a point to mention that the praise or criticism that comes from Rock matters so much more to him than anyone else's. So he kind of knows that like everyone else's
Yeah.
opinion doesn't matter. He just like pushes it away. You're right.
Yeah. That's so. Okay. Well, I mean, you asked me how it changed, like how I was gonna view, like other people or treat other people and myself, right? So what about you? Like, what do you
Yeah,
think
I think
about
that I do
yourself?
want to be more like Rock because I think it is not the ideal. It is an ideal for some people, but I think that it by reading the book, it's a really long book, it's like 700 pages. It really shows me that sometimes you have to like fight for what you want and you can't just follow what people like because in the end you also end up a bit empty and a bit hollow and not really knowing what all of it was
Mm.
for. Whereas for Rock, I like the fact that he always knew what it was for. Like I read a review which said that this is the kind of book you must read in your when you're in uni, and I think it's kind of true. It's like something that you read when
Yeah.
you don't know what to do with your life.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's true. Especially and it was even more relevant for us because she picked architecture as the field. So it was
Yeah.
quite interesting to see like how she phrased architecture
Mm.
and
I feel like we
yeah.
haven't really spoken about that theme,
About what?
the theme of architecture.
Yeah, yeah, let's talk about the theme of architecture.
Well, I think in terms of how she's treated the architecture, you can kind of tell that I guess she did a lot of research, but some parts also don't really make a lot of sense as an a student, I don't know much about the industry also obviously, but also like the fact that like he had quite a few commissions, and for some architects that's like a really big oeuvre of work already. Like some of the
Wait, for
really top
who?
architects,
Oh, you mean Rourke had a few commissions?
yeah, he had quite a few buildings. And I feel like in the book she makes him build the buildings like really fast, like in 18 months, which is actually really fast. He
Yeah,
also like
yeah.
designs whole buildings in 2 weeks, which is like a bit
Not
crazy.
possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the thing is, Ayn Rand, like, she didn't know anything about the field of architecture beforehand, so she needed to do, like, lots of research, right? And then it says that she thought that architects provide, like, both art and a basic need for men's survival, which is why she picked that as a field.
Hmm.
So, in a sense, she was also talking about, like, the time periods and, like, in the improvements of architecture where, like, certain architects had to, like, kind of like catalyze the movement of like changing architecture in terms of the style and stuff. So it's almost like, I think it's just essentially like the conflict between innovation and tradition, cuz in the beginning of the book, the very beginning of the book is where Rourke gets expelled from the architecture school by arguing with the dean of his school.
Hmm.
So the dean in the opening chapter tells Rourke that the best architecture must copy the past rather than innovate or improve.
Mm. Which is quite stupid to us when in the book it's made so obvious that it doesn't make any sense to copy like Corinthian columns and stuff. But I feel like in our context, it's actually really relevant because even though we say, oh, that's a bit stupid, why would you copy those columns? I still look at like past work in my school of like seniors and stuff who win prizes, or even architects who have built stuff, and I do think like, oh, I should copy this concept and copy this. So I'm not sure that I agree with her view, with Ayn Rand's view also, that architecture should be very utilitarian. Like if a column is there, it has to be there. There cannot be any ornament on it. And I also don't really agree with her view that architecture can't copy from the past, because I guess that's what she's fighting for in Rock's
Mm.
vision. But there are quite a few architects and famous architects as well who like consider architecture to be basically like putting together what other people have built in the past and to making it into a new building.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, right, because she's not actually in the field of architecture, so I don't think we should take her views on architecture that seriously. Because I mean,
Mm.
she's only using architecture as a vessel to bring out her entire point of like individualism versus collectivism, right? Like architecture is just a vessel. But yeah, I agree with you, especially in the front that like we look at the book and we're like, oh, that's really stupid. But it's kind of happening in the same way, but except for like copying like old buildings, it's like past work that succeeded, say in our school's curriculum. You would look at it and say, oh, like should my work look more like that? And
Mm.
in order to like gain the praise of like tutors and like the school's recognition, in order to be like a good, actually a good student in the Bartlett an architecture school. Yeah, so I think it's still really relevant to us as architecture students
Yeah.
because, and the thing is also, I don't think creativity or any creativity project can just come out of nowhere. Like you need to
Yeah.
have some sort of basis as say like research or like some precedents that you're looking at. It can't just come from nowhere because that I don't think it works like that. You
Yeah.
know? Like it needs to have a basis or like references that you looked at, and that kind of becomes the basis of your work rather than just creating out of like pure nothing. I think well, definitely not copy, right? Like you obviously you can't directly copy, but I think it's kind of like taking elements that you enjoyed or you like
Hmm.
and
Putting
kind of
it together.
applying it. Yeah, applying it in a different way
Yeah.
to what you're designing, I think.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
you're right about definitely not taking architecture views too close to heart. But another theme that she also talks quite a lot about inside is about actually, but when I read it, I thought it was really good for me because as someone who like doesn't think about architecture as something that other people really think about and look up to, it was really nice to see like someone else's point of view of the industry and what it means, because you're right, it is like the intersection of like art and survival and science and physics and maths, and it's such a nice balance. I always forget that. That's kind of
Yeah.
like one of the reasons why I like it. So it was a good reminder.
Yeah, I guess it. Well, I think that's the reason why I liked it, because it was almost like an arts, humanities, and science like subject. Because
Mm.
it's like everything combined. You have the people living in it, you have the structural integrity, and then you have like the aesthetics element. So I feel like it kind of all comes to life together, and kind of using that as like a foundation of where this story takes place, and talking about like kind of like the inner struggles of people in the field, and the kind of like conflict that people have in themselves and also with other people. I just felt like was a quite a new perspective to look at, especially the book was written in like 1934. So it was just nice to like look at it when, because I read it 2 years ago, so that was like, how many years is that? But anyway, it's just like a long time from when it was written. I don't want to do the maths.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. I think you're right. It's like pretty relevant even until now, the themes that we grapple with in all arts, actually. Even all pursuits, like even if you do like creative coding or normal coding or like engineering, and like the struggle between innovating and writing new code, which you haven't thought about, and also just like following the old ways and like doing what people used to do before. I think something
Yeah.
else which was she brought up quite a lot was the influence of uh criticism and media on
Mm.
art, because there's so many characters who are deeply involved in media. Dominique is like a writer for a newspaper, and so is Tuhi, and Wynan actually owns like a big media empire. So to
Mm.
her, the relationship between what people write and what people basically like what media people consume and what people consider to be good and their value system is like very close and direct.
Yeah, I think like even though we don't know it, but I feel like a lot of our views are definitely like shaped by the media. Like even though we say like I think we like to think it's not, which is I guess why the for a government is so important for like media censorship and like to get a hold of like what actually is
Ooh.
played on the media, which is I guess a very big theme. But yeah, I think it's kind of like everything is like interlocked together, like with art, and say in the book like architecture is very much like dependent on the media, because in a way then you can grasp like the the public's view on a certain thing, because even in the book like too he was trying to like push his own political agenda
Mm-hmm.
through his critic column by
Mm-hmm.
like criticizing like Rourke's architecture, for example. And I
Mm-hmm.
forgot what he said, but he was saying how like it was kind of going against his political stance, so people need to like reject his work in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like very like manipulative in
Mm-hmm.
like the way that he, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, because that's how people are controlled. I guess it sounds a bit antiquated now when we have videos and stuff and handphones, but I think it was quite interesting also how even though she considers that to be the main way that people are swayed, and people are swayed so easily in her book, by the way, she still writes that like people don't read the columns. For example, like Dominique's column, um, to, I think Dominique also mentions like, oh, no one actually reads it. Like I don't, but the people who read it, like Tuhi and Wynan, are like very influenced by it, and therefore they influence other people, like the masses as well. So yeah, I think you're right. Like everything has influence, even if nobody really consumes it. As long as it's consumed by the right people who have an agenda, then
yeah,
it's influencing you in some way.
yeah. Let's talk about like our, I guess like kind of just discussion and complaints about like
Oh.
characters and the plot. I feel like it's a nice discussion. Yeah, so kind of like going back to Rourke, because he's the main character, and I feel like there are so much things we can like talk about him. I think I said this before, but I think my main issue with him is that he is okay, he's an inspiring character, but for me he's almost very godlike as
Mm-hmm.
a person. Like you wouldn't find that type of person in real life.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like he's almost too perfect of a man. Like it doesn't show the internal struggles of a human being. It's almost as if he knows like exactly what he wants and his values since he became an architecture student, which is like what you said. Like he never really changed that much, which would be very different, especially for us, because I feel like we developed a lot in
School.
university.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we're gonna continue developing like as we go out. But for him, he kind of just remained the same. And then
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like the question I asked, like what makes him so sure that he believes what he believes is correct. And I guess also for me, like I guess Rourke is a tool, like a vessel that Ayn Rand wanted to use to like convey her thoughts, which is why in the courtroom scene when he was being accused of like, I forgot what he was being accused of, which is really bad because it's essential to the plot. But anyways, I think he was just accused of like doing something bad on the architecture like field front, and like he really wants to bring him down to like prove a point to Dominique, I think. But it
Yeah,
was
it was
just,
something to do with the statue, wasn't it? It was about the statue which he made of Dominique,
oh yeah, something like that. But
and it was like
essentially,
objectifying or something.
maybe. But yeah, and then I guess the point I'm trying to make is like in the courtroom, like because it was like his defense scene, so he kind of made a lot of lengthy speeches that almost breaks the fourth wall, which is like as if the writer was speaking directly to the reader through the characters. And in his speech, he was talking about how like, oh, everyone is just like following what everyone wants and they're not really thinking about themselves, like they're just mindless people like walking around, and how he's the only one that can like see this pattern and like jump out of this sea of people that follows what everyone is saying. And I just look at it like it makes sense in a book, but like if someone were to say that in real life, I think they would just be very arrogant. It's
Mm.
almost as if he knows, which is the godlike trait, like he thinks he's just correct at all
Yeah.
times, which is, yeah, I think a bit of an issue, but like it worked in the book
Okay. I
as a
think to counter
character.
those points, the last one about it being very preachy and not realistic, I guess the whole point of Ayn Rand's writing is not for it to be realistic also. It's
Well,
just like to
yeah.
project it as an ideal. And also like she wrote the book kind of as a manifesto as well. So I guess
Mm,
that was kind of what she was going for. But I
yeah.
agree, like it makes him seem like a kind of an asshole. Like at that particular moment. He's asshole like throughout the book, but at that particular moment
Yeah,
was like
he
quite bad.
yeah, he is.
Yeah. Another thing also is that because you say that like he doesn't really show the struggles of a human being, like he doesn't really know what he knows what he wants, but he always had it. Even though I said this just now, I also feel like he does know what he wants to learn as well. So he goes for the things that he wants to learn, and he knows like the things that he needs to survive. So he knows that, for example, he needs to go to Stanton. If he didn't know that, then he wouldn't even have gone to uni, I guess. And then he knows that he wants to learn from Henry Cameron, like this particular architect. So he goes and searches for it. And I guess that shows that he knows that he has to grow in some way. He just grows in a very like linear way.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I guess so. Like everything, I feel like he kind of like sets out everything in his head. Like
Mm.
this is what I'm gonna do. That's what I'm gonna achieve. Like he
Mm-hmm.
knows exactly what he wants and like how that's gonna happen and unfold in his life. I guess the only thing that was unexpected in his life was like Dominique, which
Mm.
was the most interesting part of the book, I guess. But it was weird because she married like three different characters in the book. Like she married Peter
Yeah.
Keating, and then she married Gail Wynan, and then she married like Rourke.
Yeah.
So
We can move on to her. She's such a strange character.
she
She's
is
very
very
hard to
strange.
untangle because she's portrayed as knowing a lot and being able to differentiate in Ayn Rand's eyes between good and bad, but yet like hiding it on purpose. Like she's just like if she sees this beauty in the world, she would rather no one gets it than she has to share it with other people, which is
Yeah,
so
she was very
strange.
confusing as a character. I remember like reading what she was saying, and then I got so confused because I was like, I thought she was supposed to be helping Rourke, but then she was actively like working against him, and I was like, I don't understand what's going on. And then I realized afterwards that it's what you said, like because she realizes like the beauty in Rourke and his passion and like his determination to like pull through,
Mm,
but she feels like it's not actively like viewed as like, valued in society,
mm,
so she just like works against him, and she's like,
mm.
okay, let me just prove to you that actually you're not gonna be valid in society, and I'm gonna like help you prove that I'm correct. Like
Yeah.
even though I think it's nice, but I'm gonna work against you and prove to you that nobody actually values it. So whatever. And then it's just boggles my mind like why she would do that. I don't understand why.
Yeah, when she sees something that she likes, she just wants it to be destroyed. Or she doesn't want, like, she wants herself to suffer, which is so weird.
Yeah.
And
I
she
guess
likes suffering.
in the end it worked out because she married
Sorry.
Rourke.
Yeah,
But still, I was very confused with the whole progression of
yeah.
the relationship.
She just does things until she's bored of it, and it has no purpose.
Yeah, I don't actually I feel like this is the part of the book where I just don't understand. Like I don't
Yeah.
understand why she needs to work against
I feel like
Rourke.
also a very problematic part of her, which a lot of people raise, was that she likes being violently have had she likes to have sex like very violently. And then she calls it rape. In the book she calls
Yeah, she actually
what
called.
happened
Okay,
rape.
so the scenario was that actually the first time that Rourke and Dominique met, I think it was on a construction site, and
Yeah.
like Rourke was very poor, so he was like working to like earn money and stuff. And then they met, and then for some reason, like Dominique invited him to her room or something, and then I guess essentially like Rourke
Oh, but the
raped
time
her.
that he raped her, he went to his her room without her asking for it.
Oh,
Yeah.
s-
So
yeah.
like
So
so yeah, so
she
Dominic
didn't.
like invited him to the house a few times, but like the time when he raped her, like he wasn't invited, which I guess makes it rape.
Oh, yeah, like she had no consent.
Yeah.
Basically, he just did it, and then in the book, like she called it rape, but then at the same time, she was saying how she also like enjoyed it because of like the authority like he had over her, and
Mm.
she was like submissive, and I was very like shocked reading that part because I don't understand. Like, actually, I don't understand the point of it being in the book. Maybe you can, if you have a few points, but I actually don't understand why that needed to be in the book. And I guess that was kind of like a lot of like criticism that Ayn Rand got was like she was essentially like supporting rape, and it was
Yeah.
like it was like very not feminist because she was like a woman. So yeah, I guess female readers were just mad about it.
But I also understand that like if that's your sexual preference, then you're free to do whatever you want, I guess, if you really enjoy
Like
that.
the thing is, it only worked because she liked Rourke. Like if she
Yeah.
didn't, that would
But that's
be
the thing about Rock. He knows what
he knows
is
that she
right.
likes him.
He knows what's right also. Like he knows that that was the
Yeah,
right thing to do.
he knows the right thing to do was to rape Dominique.
Oh my days. That sounds so
That's
bad.
yeah, that sounds so bad. But I guess it just worked in the book because again, Rourke is very godlike, so he knows exactly what he should do and
Yeah.
like what's correct. Like yeah, so it's very weird. But I guess
Mm.
like you said, the book is not realistic, so whatever. But I didn't understand why that needed to be in the book. Like it didn't provide any value to the progression of the story.
I guess it was also essential to show that Rock knows things to this extent. And he also is like a human being who like wants to have sex, I guess. If not, he would just be like super featureless.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, I do have to agree that I felt like the dynamic between Rourke and Dominique was like very interesting to read, but yeah, I don't necessarily agree with that part of the book, but we can move on from that, I guess.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
the other character would be Peter Keating. What do you think is wrong with Peter Keating? I think he is
What is wrong
actually
with it? Well,
quite
we said like
understandable.
yeah, but we said like he actively betrays himself just now.
That's
So that
true.
was like my problem with him. But
That's
mostly
true.
I feel like he's a quite normal character in like real life. Like I would think a Peter Keating exists in real
Yeah.
life. Not to the
I
extent where they
yeah.
betray themselves.
Yeah, he also betrays himself and he also listens to other people way too much. And I feel like even his twisted notion of always going to Rock for help and then trying to like pay him off to do it, he just has like a very gray moral compass.
Yeah. He never gives Rourke credit, but Rourke doesn't ask for credit, but he just I don't know.
He also
Like
knows that like Dominique likes Rock, but yet he wants her really badly. He wants basically everything that Rock wants, but he's willing to do anything to get it. So like he like edges out his competitors in the firm and stuff to get to become a partner, right? But that's just so great, like the moral
the
compass to do
yeah,
that.
the thing is I think he gains kind of everything he wanted, but he's never actually happy, which is he almost uses Rourke to like prove to himself that he's happy. Like he goes to
Mm,
Rourke and like tells him all of the
mm,
achievements he
mm,
had,
mm.
and then Rourke is like, okay, whatever, like I
Yeah.
don't care. And then he like Peter Keating would get really mad that Rourke doesn't care, and he really wants Rourke to like approve of him. But Rourke obviously never approves of him, right? So I feel like he's almost as if like he wants to lie to himself. It's almost as if Rourke approves, then it means that the world must approve him, because like some part of him is like still unconvinced that
Yeah.
he really got like everything he wanted. And
I guess
Rourke's like
it's
the
like
person.
like those celebrities who say that like the whole world likes them, but like the only people that matter are actually very few. Like you can count them on one hand, which I guess is the case with Peter
Yeah.
Keating, where like the whole world really does like him, and the only person who doesn't is Rock. Therefore, he wants Rock's approval the most.
Which is actually really actually the relationship between Keating and Rourke is like very interesting. Cause,
Yeah.
cause Rourke kind of, I guess he low key despises Keating, right? But he still helps him. I guess it's for
Yeah.
the sake of the work that Keating has and he doesn't, so he can do the
Oh,
work.
this is something else as well. Like the fact that he finds it so painful and emotionally draining to like look at a bad plan or to see a bad building. Like it physically hurts him. So I guess that's what pushes him to help Keating as well. Like when the plan is bad, I think there's a paragraph in the book where he mentioned that he cannot bear for this building to be built because it's just so bad. Like that he has to help Keating.
He's like, I can't stand it anymore.
Yeah.
Let my architecture skills save your building.
Yeah.
And it worked out for Keating in a way, because Rourke doesn't get credit, but as soon as long as the work is like announced as Keating's work, it's good, even though Rourke did it. But if Rourke got his name on the work, it's automatically bad work in the book, obviously, like based
Yeah.
on the critic column. But I just felt like their dynamic is like really weird, because I don't think they actually like each other.
But they don't
they
hate each other as well.
they don't hate each other, but at the same time they like
It's strange. It's like all the
it's
relationships in the movie, sorry, in the book, it's never
straightforward one.
yeah. And it's also that like they need each other. It's like very parasitic. They need each other, but nobody really benefits from it.
It's never actually. I feel like the only genuine relationship in the book was Keating and Katie's relationship,
Oh,
like his ex girlfriend. That's the only genuine relationship I can think of. Like everyone kind
had
of
an
just have
agenda.
some, yeah, they have some motives, or like whenever they speak, there's like subtext in what they're saying, and
Yeah.
it's like kind of hard for me to catch on to exactly what their goal or view is at the moment, especially with a character like Dominique. Like her views and motives like changes throughout the book, and I have
Yeah.
to like catch on like what she's planning to do next, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I guess interesting topics to like think about. Like when is your own, like how can you know if your stance is good, or like when is it bad? Like can you still be seen as like a hero if if the work that you produce is quote unquote bad? And like can your work really be bad? Because like cuz in the book, right? Like does it mean that like everyone in the book is like blind to Rourke's talents? But what if his talent is actually bad, because like the readers can't see it, right? Like it's all based off of the author's
What
like
she says,
description. Yeah. So you don't actually know. So how can you know if your work is like actually bad, or like are you good if you believe in yourself but your like your work is bad? You know, like it's
Yeah,
so many
that's true.
gray areas.
I guess it's because to her, Ayn Rand, the premise for architecture being good is very clear cut. It's as long as it has no ornament and it serves its purpose to the barest extent. Like it has to serve its purpose really, really well, and you have to use as little things as possible to like for it to serve the purpose. Like it has to be very clean. So I think because the goal is like very defined, so for her it's quite easy for her to define what is good and bad. But yeah, I think you're right. Like maybe part of the reason why she wrote it that way was because she wants us to see Rock's point of view as well.
Mm.
Because to him it literally like there's no other option. Like his work is literally the best.
Yeah, which is really weird, especially in nowadays. Like, there's no one definition of good. Like, everyone has such a different view, anyways. So, it's just hard to like pinpoint, I guess. And also, like to a certain extent, like the author is praising Rourke's work, right? So like we're forced to believe his work is good without actually seeing it, since it's in a novel, right?
Yeah.
So like in a sense, you still need people to appreciate your work in order to move forward. And like in the end, people actually found beauty in Rourke's work. So like, is that still collectivism? Like, is there really a purpose to like producing work when no one can appreciate it except yourself? Like,
Ooh.
I really don't know. You
I
know?
think there is. something that she really brings out as well is the beauty in the pursuit of creative expression. So part of the reason why Rock's considered a really good and moral ideal is also because he really enjoys like the creative journey of making things. Like he loves the earth, like he loves using his hands to build stuff and making the things come together. So that's also part of the reason why he's such a great character. So maybe there is a reason to produce work that no one else can appreciate.
I guess in a sense that like yeah, you kind of you it's nice to have people to appreciate your work, but you kind of have to learn to appreciate your work yourself first
Hmm.
before other people can appreciate. Because I think Keating never kind of appreciated his work. Like his main drive was to like, create work that people would like. Whereas for
Hmm.
Rourke, like it was always like he needs to like it first before
Hmm.
other people can like it. So I guess maybe that's the difference. I guess I kind of answered my own question. Like the
Yeah.
difference between people actually liking Keating and Rourke's work is that Rourke really enjoyed and liked his work, whereas Keating did it for the prestige because
Yeah.
he didn't even want to be an architect in the beginning. He wanted to be a painter.
This is a tangent, but do you think this is kind of related to the previous episode as well? Not previous, the one before that. But like, do you think your personality determines whether you want to keep things to yourself or share it? Because, for example, going back to like, for example, Valerie, when she sees something nice and she experiences something really good, she wants to like share it with the world, which is why she wants more people to experience it. Therefore,
Oh.
you want to share this beauty with other people. But then other people like me, I'm more definitely more towards this side where I see something that's really nice and good. I want to like keep it to myself. I don't want anyone else to like pollute it, depending what it is, obviously. But
I think it really depends on what it is and like also I don't know, this is such a deep topic. Like it's weird because I think it depends on how much help that thing is going to be because I feel like if it's something like say like my portfolio work
mm-hmm,
kind of like because I did a YouTube video on that. So I was like, oh, that's helpful to other people. So I feel like I should show that.
mm,
But say if it's something very pure and very personal to me, say like a conversation that I had with a friend that I thought was like very thought provoking and very personal to us, maybe I only want to keep it to myself or share it with like a few friends that I think could really appreciate the conversation and the kind of level we have in that conversation and not necessarily like
mm-hmm,
promote it to the entire world, you
mm-hmm,
know? But I feel like in
mm-hmm.
general, if something happens and I think on a general level people can appreciate it, then why
You would
not?
want
Like,
more people, right? If it doesn't harm the
yeah.
thing,
Yeah, if it doesn't harm the thing. Yeah.
that's not what Dominique thinks. But yeah, that's interesting.
Okay. I guess in a way to like summarize like our thoughts on the book, I think mostly I did enjoy the book. Did you enjoy the
I
book?
love, okay, not love. I really liked it. Like I could,
Ah,
it's like
yeah, I
a
quite liked
page
it.
turner. Like I
Yeah, it
actually
was
really
a
wanted
good
to
read.
see. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a good book. I feel like it had a good plot line, and I think the author, like Ayn Rand, like she kind of got her point across. Like towards the end, I was like, "Whoa, Rourke really is like the ideal man." Like until I really rethought about it, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think she got her point across like really well, and I think just the conflict between like individualism and collectivism, like the whole plot revolving around that conflict was like
Mm.
quite nice and interesting. Also, like the characters' motives and kind of their thoughts changes like
Mm-hmm.
throughout the book. So it was like really quite interesting to read that. Also, especially for us in architecture, so we can kind of think about like our thoughts in architecture, and obviously it doesn't just relate to architecture because for the author she just picked architecture as a vessel. It could be like any other field of work. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, I think it's just kind of questioning like our motives and like our I guess like our views on like producing work, like is it for ourselves or other people, and just kind of thinking about the way that we treat other people, other people's work, and like also our work, and like our work process is just I don't know, quite interesting, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought it was good because I think things are good when they like not things, sorry. I think media and medium that I consume, I consider it good when I think about it often afterwards and I feel that it has changed my life. Wow, that sounds so dramatic. But like even a little bit. So I feel like this book really has made me rethink a lot of things.
Yeah, I think it definitely changed like my point of view a lot, especially in the part that I think having to be more confident in my work and abilities, and also just believing in yourself and like having more confidence in your work. Yeah, I think that's really important because you're the one that can push yourself. I said that, but I just think it's important that you're the one to push yourself and believe in your own work, because I think you have to believe in it first before you can convince other people to believe in your own work. Otherwise, you're always going to be like an empty hollow shell that doesn't have the what do you call it, like the amount to like back yourself up when you're presenting your work to other people, or you're trying to convince other people to like appreciate your own work, which is what Peter Keating lacked in the book.
I agree. Good read.
Yeah.
5
Yeah,
out
good
of
read.
4 out of 5.
4 out of 5? Yeah, I give it 4 to 4.2
Just
out of
that
5.
I think it loses 1 point because it's like frustrating to read because the characters are just so like irritating sometimes because they're so extreme.
Yeah, it's a very extreme characters in the book, but it was still a good read. So yeah, we recommend it if you're like starting uni, or I don't know, like just I think when you read it at different points in your life, it gives you like different views.
Yeah.
If it's a good book. So yeah. Okay. Thank you for listening to this episode. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Bye.